No one in that courtroom knew what was about to happen, not the bailiff, not the audience, and definitely not Karen, who walked in wearing confidence like armor. She thought she owned the room. She thought she could bend the truth, twist the law, and walk out untouched. But what she didn't know, was that the smallest, quietest person in that courtroom, the one she underestimated the most, was about to expose her in a way she never saw coming. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Judge Judy sat there, barely 5 feet tall, shoulders relaxed, flipping quietly through a stack of documents. To Karen, she didn't look like a threat. Judy didn't raise her voice. She didn't slam the files. She didn't cut anyone off. She wasn't the storm today. She was the calm before it. And that's what fooled Karen. Karen stepped forward with a smile that wasn't a smile, more like a smirk carved into her face. She held up a sheet of paper like it was a golden ticket. "Your Honor," she said, pretending to tremble, "I have a therapist note that proves I was mentally unfit to attend the last hearing." She waved it dramatically, waiting for the room to gasp. But the room didn't gasp. Judge Judy just blinked behind her glasses and said one soft word, "Hand it over." The audience barely noticed it, but something shifted. Judy's eyes sharpened. She studied the note, not with suspicion, but with recognition. Like she'd seen this trick before. Like she already knew this paper wasn't the blessing Karen thought it was. Karen, oblivious, kept talking. "I've been under severe emotional trauma, unbearable stress. I couldn't appear last time, Your Honor, I hope the court understands." She placed a dramatic hand on her chest. Judge Judy didn't interrupt her. Didn't argue. Didn't challenge. She simply said, in the quietest voice Karen had ever heard, "Interesting." One word. And the entire courtroom finally felt it, the silent warning behind it. If Karen had been paying attention, she would have stopped talking. But she didn't. Judge Judy looked at the bottom of the page, her head tilting slightly. Then she looked up with a face so calm, so unreadable, that Karen mistook it for surrender. But it wasn't surrender. It was the look of a judge who just discovered something, and was giving the liar one last chance to tell the truth. Karen didn't take it. Judy placed the note on the bench with deliberate care, as though it were something fragile. And then, still quiet, still soft, she said a sentence that cut through the room sharper than any shout could. "Miss Karen, your therapist will now join us by phone to verify this document." Karen froze. Because that was the one thing she didn't expect. The audience leaned forward. The courtroom fell silent. And for the first time since she entered, Karen's confidence cracked. Before the doctor reveals what happens next, tell me in the comments, should forging a therapist note mean jail time? Comment yes or no. Karen swallowed hard, but she forced her chin up, as if defiance alone could control the room. Her fingers twitched at the edges of her blouse, betraying the cracks forming beneath the polished exterior. "Your Honor, that won't be necessary," she said too quickly. "Dr. Franklin is extremely busy. I don't want to disturb." Judge Judy raised one finger. Just one. Not a command, not a shout, just a gentle lift of her hand that silenced not only Karen, but half the courtroom. The power in that gesture didn't come from volume. It came from certainty. "Miss Karen," Judy said softly, "if the note is real, your therapist will have no issue confirming it." Karen blinked, her throat tightening. It was the first time she realized the judge wasn't playing along. Judge Judy wasn't the harmless little lady she thought she could fool. She wasn't the easy obstacle Karen expected to step over. She was the threat Karen never saw coming. Judge Judy motioned to the clerk. "Place the call." The clerk dialed the number printed on the document. The room felt smaller, tighter, as it rang. Karen's breathing grew louder. A few audience members leaned forward so far their seats creaked. Then, click. A calm professional voice answered the speakerphone. "This is Dr. Linda Franklin." Karen shut her eyes. Judge Judy didn't look away from her. "Doctor," she said politely, "we're in open court. I've been presented with a therapist note bearing your name. I need you to confirm whether you authored it." A pause. A deadly, surgical pause. Then, "Your Honor. I have never written a note for a patient named Karen." Gasps rippled across the courtroom like a sudden storm wind. Someone in the audience muttered, "Oh wow," under their breath. A woman clasped her purse tighter. A man in the second row shook his head. Karen's face drained of color. That can't be right," she stuttered. "I saw her. She treated me." But the doctor wasn't finished. "Judge," Dr. Franklin continued, her tone steady and professional, "the signature on that document is not mine. And the letterhead appears to be a template that's been circulating on fraudulent medical sites for years." The judge slowly set the note back down, her expression unreadable. Not angry. Not shocked. Not triumphant. Just calm. The kind of calm that comes from a person who already knew the truth long before anyone else did. Karen's lawyer leaned toward her urgently, whispering, "Stop talking, please stop talking," but Karen's panic had overtaken her judgment. "Doctor, you're mistaken." Karen sputtered. "We had a session 3 weeks ago, you must remember me." "Miss Karen," Judge Judy interjected softly, but the softness struck harder than any gavel. "You will not badger a medical professional to validate a lie." The room went still. And Karen knew, Judy hadn't just taken control. She had seized the entire tone of the case. Judy lifted the note again between 2 fingers, like it was something delicate and dangerous. "Doctor," she asked gently, "for the record, please list every patient you've treated in the past 6 months." Karen's heart plummeted. Dr. Franklin listed them one by one. Not a single name resembled Karen's. With each name spoken, the courtroom's attention shifted, not to the doctor, not to Judy, but to Karen. People stared, whispers floated like smoke, and judgment brewed not from the bench, but from every eye in the room. When the doctor finished, Judge Judy nodded. "Thank you, doctor. You've been very helpful. If you need anything else, Your Honor, please let me know." The call ended. Silence settled like dust. Karen clutched her handbag so tight her knuckles whitened. She had nowhere to look, every direction was a wall. Every whisper was about her. Every breath in the room seemed heavier than her excuses. Judge Judy placed the forged note aside and folded her hands neatly. "Miss Karen," she said with a softness that landed like a verdict, "you submitted a medical document under penalty of perjury. You claimed it excused you from attending a court-ordered session. You have wasted this court's time, delayed justice, and attempted to weaponize mental health." Karen's throat bobbed. She opened her mouth, but Judy lifted a hand again. "No," she said. "I'm not finished." The entire courtroom leaned in. Judy continued, "This court offers many things. Fairness. Patience. Opportunity. What it does not offer, is tolerance for fraud." A tremor passed through the audience, shock mixed with admiration. It wasn't the volume of Judy's voice that hit them. It was the precision. The control. The quiet authority of someone underestimated too many times. Karen finally whispered, "Your Honor. I didn't mean." Judy tilted her head. "Didn't mean to." "Miss Karen, that signature didn't write itself." The faintest hint of disappointment, not anger, slipped into Judy's tone. And somehow, that disappointed softness felt worse than rage. "No one forced you to forge a therapist's note. No one compelled you to lie to this court." Judy's gaze sharpened. "You chose deceit, hoping I'd be too distracted or too gentle to notice. And then, quietly, the hammer dropped. You chose the wrong judge to underestimate. A murmur surged across the gallery like a wave hitting shore. Judy sat back, calm and composed, but her posture radiated something unmistakable, a warning. And Karen realized the truth: she hadn't just tried to fool the court. She had tried to fool Judge Judy. And she was about to pay for it. The courtroom had already shifted once, but now it shifted again, this time in a way Karen never expected. Because once the forged note was exposed, the doctor didn't simply disappear from the moment. She stayed on speakerphone, her voice steady and clear, almost surgical in the way it cut through Karen's excuses. "Your Honor," Dr. Franklin said, "if it helps, I can walk the court through the specific inconsistencies in the document." Judge Judy nodded calmly. "Please do." Karen flinched. The doctor began, with the tone of a professional who'd handled dozens of fraud attempts but never failed to identify one. "First," she said, "the date on the letterhead uses a formatting style we discontinued 3 years ago." A couple of people in the audience leaned toward each other, whispering. Karen's lawyer shut his eyes like he wanted to sink into the floor. "Second," the doctor continued, "the signature at the bottom is a copy and paste amalgamation of 2 separate digital signatures that were stolen in a data breach. It is not authentic. It does not match my official medical signature." Judge Judy turned slowly toward Karen, her eyes half-lidded but razor-sharp. Karen sat frozen, her breathing shallow. Every word from the doctor landed like another brick sealing her fate. "And third," the doctor added, "the note claims a therapy session took place in my Scottsdale office on a date I was in Chicago for a mental health conference. The location stamp itself proves the session never happened." The courtroom erupted in soft gasps. Someone in the back muttered, "She didn't even try to make it believable." Karen's jaw trembled. "Your Honor, this is wrong. I must have been misled. The note was." "Miss Karen," Judy cut in gently, "every time you speak, the hole gets deeper. That softness again. That terrifying softness. The kind that said, 'I see you. I see everything you thought you hid.'" Judy leaned back. "Doctor, in your professional experience, what does it usually indicate when a patient presents a forged mental health document?" Karen's head dropped. The doctor's answer was simple. Brutally simple. "It indicates they either want to avoid responsibility, or manipulate a legal process." Judge Judy nodded once, slowly. "Thank you, doctor." A hush swept the room as the call ended. No dramatic beep. No slam. Just silence so heavy Karen felt it pressing into her lungs. Judge Judy folded her hands. "Miss Karen," she said quietly, "this court gave you opportunities. You could have appeared. You could have requested an extension. You could have told the truth." Karen swallowed hard, her voice cracking, "Your Honor. I was scared." Judy stared at her, not with cruelty, but with the weary disappointment of someone who'd seen lies dressed as fear more times than she could count. "Fear doesn't produce forged signatures," Judy replied. "Fear doesn't create documents using stolen medical templates. Fear doesn't fabricate therapy sessions in cities the doctor wasn't even in." Karen's eyes filled with tears, but Judy didn't soften. Because today, being soft would reward the lie instead of honoring the truth. "You didn't act out of fear," Judy continued. "You acted out of convenience. You wanted the court to bend around your schedule, your desires, your priorities. And then," her voice quieted even more. "And you assumed I wouldn't notice." The words weren't shouted. They weren't scolding. They were simply the truth held up like a mirror. Karen couldn't look into it. Her hands trembled on her lap. She whispered, "Your Honor. I never meant to disrespect the court." Judy's eyes softened, but not in sympathy. In clarity. "Intent," she said, "is measured by action, not apology." No one breathed. No one blinked. The tension stretched like a wire pulled too tight. Judy then turned her attention to the defense table. "Counselor," she addressed Karen's attorney, "how does your client wish to proceed now that the document has been confirmed as forged?" The attorney hesitated, a long, painful hesitation. His shoulders slumped with silent shame. "Your Honor, my client wishes to." Karen grabbed his arm. "No. Don't," she hissed. "We can fight this, she's just confused." The lawyer stared at her in disbelief. "Karen," he whispered harshly, "the doctor wasn't confused." Judge Judy lifted a hand. "Enough." The word wasn't loud, but it stopped Karen mid-breath. "This is not a battle you can shout your way out of," Judy said softly. "This is the moment you decide whether to dig deeper into dishonesty, or start climbing out." Karen's lower lip quivered. She lowered her eyes. For the first time, her voice was no longer angry, just small. What happens now?" she whispered. And Judy replied with the kind of calm that made every person in the room lean forward, knowing the storm was finally forming behind the quiet. "What happens now," Judy said, "is accountability. Accountability." The word hung over Karen's head like a weight, heavier than any sentence she'd imagined before she walked into that courtroom. When she arrived, she thought accountability meant a stern lecture and a warning. Maybe a rescheduled date. Maybe a sigh from the judge and a wave of the hand. She hadn't imagined this. She hadn't imagined the whole room staring at her like she'd just ripped pages out of a book everyone else respected. Judge Judy turned to the clerk again, that same steady patience in her eyes. "Mark the therapist's note as Exhibit A," she said calmly, "and record for the record that it has been identified as forged by the named doctor." The clerk nodded, her fingers moving quickly. The small sound of the stamp hitting paper echoed louder than Karen's own heartbeat. Exhibit A, the lie. Judy then looked toward the opposing table. "Now," she said quietly, "let's talk about the consequences." The opposing party, who until now had sat stiff and quiet, finally raised their head. Maybe it was an ex-husband who'd been dragged through endless delays. Maybe it was a landlord whose property had been damaged. Maybe it was a former employer who'd been fighting a false claim. Whoever they were, their eyes carried exhaustion. "Your Honor," they began, their voice raw but controlled, "this isn't the first time she's pulled something like this." Karen whipped around. "That's not true," she snapped. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed, not with rage, but with that same disappointed calm. "Miss Karen," she said, "you will not interrupt while someone else is speaking. You had your time. You used it to lie." The room reacted, not loudly, but with a quiet wave of approval. A few nods. A few satisfied exhales. People came to court to watch justice. Today, they were watching someone who tried to cheat get brought back to reality. The opposing party continued. "We've been in and out of court for months. She no-shows, she makes excuses, she calls in sick when it's convenient. But now she used mental health as a shield. As if trauma is a costume she can put on when she doesn't feel like facing the truth." A woman in the gallery tightened her arms around her purse. She knew people who really struggled. She knew what real therapy cost, not just in money, but in courage. Judge Judy nodded slowly. "This court takes mental health seriously," she said. "Which is why I will not allow it to be turned into a prop." Her eyes drifted back to Karen. "You didn't just skip a date," Judy continued softly. "You didn't just delay a case. You tried to hide behind an illness that countless people struggle with for real. People who have to fight just to get out of bed in the morning. People who would never dream of using their pain to dodge responsibility." Karen's eyes shimmered with fresh tears. "I was overwhelmed," she whispered. "And overwhelmed people ask for help," Judy replied. "They don't fabricate it." Every word hit like a step down a staircase Karen didn't realize she was on until she slipped. And now she could only keep falling. Judge Judy raised the forged note one more time, studying it like a detective studying a clue in a mystery she'd already solved. "You didn't think I'd call the doctor," she said. "It wasn't a question." Karen stayed silent. "You thought I would see a fancy letterhead and a shaky paragraph and say, 'Poor thing, she's fragile,' and pat you on the head and move the date." Judy's gaze sharpened, her voice still low. "You wanted the benefits of vulnerability without any of the honesty that comes with it." The courtroom didn't clap. This wasn't a TV episode with canned applause. It was heavier than that. More real. But a feeling moved through them, respect, not just for Judy's words, but for the way she delivered them. Quiet. Controlled. Like an underdog who doesn't roar, she just refuses to back down. Karen's lawyer cleared his throat. "Your Honor," he began cautiously, "my client understands the seriousness now." "She." "No," Judy said, still soft. "She understands she was caught." "That is not the same thing." The lawyer deflated. Judge Judy turned her attention to the bailiff. "Has this court received any prior warnings or sanctions related to missed dates for Miss Karen?" The bailiff flipped through a file. "Yes, Your Honor. 2 prior verbal warnings on record for tardiness and 1 for a no-show without notice." Judy's eyebrow lifted slightly. So this wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. This was a pattern that finally escalated into fraud. Karen squeezed her eyes shut. "Please, Your Honor. I'm begging you, don't ruin my life over one mistake." Judy looked at her for a long moment. "When you forged this note," she asked quietly, "were you thinking about the life you might be ruining on the other side of this case?" Karen's lips parted, but nothing came out. "Were you thinking about the person who showed up every single time? The person who didn't get to hide behind a fake diagnosis?" Judy continued, her voice still gentle, her words anything but. Karen shook her head, tears streaking down her face. I just wanted it to go away," she whispered. "And that's the problem," Judy said. "You thought if you dodged this responsibility long enough, it would vanish. But responsibility doesn't disappear. It waits. And when it catches up, it always costs more than it would have if you just faced it the first time." Her eyes swept across the courtroom, including the viewers, those sitting, those watching from home, those replaying this moment in their minds. "Let me be very clear," she added. "If anyone watching this thinks a fake doctor's note, a downloaded template, or a forged signature is a shortcut, it is not a shortcut. It is a rope you are tying around your own ankles." Karen trembled. Judy gently set the forged note aside, as if she were done letting it speak for Karen. "From this moment forward," she continued, "this case is no longer just about the original dispute. It now includes your attempt to deceive this court." The opposing party exhaled, shoulders loosening for the first time. Karen's shoulders did the opposite, they folded, caved inward. The weight of the word fraud settled fully onto her. "And Miss Karen," Judy said, her gaze steady, "I haven't even addressed your punishment yet." The entire room held its breath. Because if this was what Judy sounded like before handing down consequences, no one could imagine what came next. And for the first time, even Karen stopped begging. Because deep down, she knew. This wasn't the story of a woman fooling a court. It was the story of a woman who tried to, and met the one judge she couldn't fool. And the underdog she underestimated, was the only one still standing tall. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. As if the air itself knew they had finally reached the moment everything had been building toward. The forged note, the lies, the stalling, the excuses, every thread Karen had woven was about to snap at once. Judge Judy sighed softly, a sound so small it barely reached the first row, but somehow it vibrated through the entire room. She reached for the forged note again, not with anger, not with dramatic flair, but with the steady precision of someone lifting evidence from a crime scene. "Bailiff," she said quietly, "bring Exhibit B." Karen's eyes shot open. "Exhibit what?" she whispered, but no one heard her, not really. Her words were swallowed by the tension wrapped around the walls. The bailiff carried a manila folder forward and handed it to Judy. Inside were color printouts, neatly clipped together. Judy slid the top page forward. A template. A blank therapist note template downloaded from a website infamous for fraudulent medical documents. The header matched the forged note exactly. The audience gasped, not loudly, but sharply, like a collective cut of breath. Karen shook her head violently. That's, you don't understand. Judy finally lifted her eyes. Miss Karen, she said softly, we traced the metadata on the document you submitted. It was downloaded from a website called quickhealthforms.net. Karen froze. Judy continued, you filled it out using an online editor at 2:14 a.m., the night before you emailed it to the court clerk. The gallery erupted into whispers. A man whispered, caught red-handed. A woman muttered, she played herself. Karen's lawyer rubbed his temples. Karen stared forward, expression hollowing. Your Honor, that's impossible. I didn't. Judy leaned forward just slightly, her voice dropping to the quietest tone yet, the tone that always preceded her hardest truth. Miss Karen, please don't insult my intelligence. The whispers died instantly. Her words cut like clean steel. No anger, no raised voice, no theatrics. Just the pure weight of truth. You didn't stumble into this lie, Judy continued. You crafted it. You selected a fraudulent template. You typed out a false diagnosis. You forged a signature. And when confronted, you tried to gaslight a licensed doctor on record. Karen's lip trembled. You didn't panic, Judy said. You planned. Karen squeezed her eyes shut. Your Honor, please. I was desperate. Desperation doesn't create a forged timestamp, Judy said calmly. It creates confession. You chose deception instead. A long, heavy silence sat on the room. Judy didn't look triumphant. She didn't look pleased. She looked like a judge who had seen the same mistake 100 times and knew exactly where it always led. She placed the printed template beside the forged note. Side by side, the lie and its origins glared back at Karen. Bailiff, Judy said softly, read the analysis from the fraud specialist. The bailiff unfolded the final page. According to the report, he read aloud, the forgery is confirmed with a 99.3% certainty. The signature was artificially generated from 2 separate stolen digital images. The letterhead was copied from a fraudulent template. The claimed session date conflicts with the doctor's documented travel schedule. Karen whispered, stop, please stop. But the report wasn't finished. Additionally, the bailiff continued, digital tracing shows the document originated from the defendant's IP address, using a personal device. The courtroom gasped. Someone whispered, she made it in her kitchen. Karen covered her face with both shaking hands. Judge Judy clasped her own hands together. Miss Karen, she said softly, you forged a mental health record. You attempted to deceive this court. And you wasted the time, patience, and trust of everyone involved. There was no cruelty in her tone. Only fact. Only truth. And somehow, truth hurt more than any shouting ever could. Karen's shoulders crumpled. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. But Judge Judy didn't react to the apology. She didn't lean back, didn't soften. She simply breathed once and spoke the words everyone was waiting for. This, Judy said, is fraud. And fraud has consequences. Karen sobbed quietly. The courtroom stayed silent. Not out of pity. But out of respect, for the moment the lie fully collapsed. And as the judge prepared to deliver her ruling, the tension in the room reached its highest point. Before I reveal Judge Judy's sentence, tell me in the comments, if you were the judge, what would you do? Comment, community service or jail time below. Section 6, The Falling Action, 500 words. The storm had broken. Karen sat trembling, shoulders shaking in small, uneven movements as the weight of the truth settled on her. The courtroom wasn't angry anymore, not loudly, at least. The energy had shifted into something quieter, something heavier. It felt like standing in a room after an earthquake, everything still, but nothing the same. Judge Judy rested her palms gently on the bench. Not aggressive. Not triumphant. Just steady. Miss Karen, she began, her voice level and almost soft, before I issue the consequences, I want this court to understand the real damage here. The opposing party finally sat forward, emotion tightening their voice. Your Honor. I had to take time off work. I paid for childcare. I rearranged my entire life to come to court when I was supposed to. She just downloaded a fake note and skipped. Their words weren't angry, they were tired. Real life tired. Karen curled into herself, gripping the fabric of her blouse between her fists. I never meant to hurt anyone, she whispered. Judge Judy didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. But you did, she said. You hurt this person. You wasted time. You delayed justice. And you attempted to weaponize mental health, something many people fight every day just to function. A woman in the gallery wiped a tear quietly. A man nodded with a clenched jaw. Judy continued, people come into this courtroom with real trauma. Real diagnoses. Real treatment plans. And you tried to mimic that pain for convenience. Karen sniffed, eyes red. Your Honor. I'm sorry. Judy sighed, not a frustrated sigh, but a disappointed one. An apology is a start, she said. But it is not a solution. Karen's lawyer leaned closer, whispering, let her finish. Don't speak again. Judge Judy folded her hands. This court doesn't punish people for being overwhelmed, she said. It punishes people for committing fraud. Her gaze didn't waver. And that is what you did. Karen lowered her head, tears dripping onto her lap. But, Judy continued, accountability is not about crushing someone. It's about correction. It's about ensuring the next time life challenges you, you do not choose deceit. The room softened, not for Karen, but for the lesson being spoken. Judy took a slow breath. This court will now move toward the formal ruling. Karen's breath quickened. The gallery leaned in. Even the opposing party exhaled slowly, bracing themselves. Judge Judy's voice dropped into a tone that held both gravity and clarity. Miss Karen, she said, what happens next is not meant to break you. It is meant to rebuild you. Those words hung in the air like a final calm before the verdict. And everyone knew, the real judgment was seconds away. The courtroom felt like the world had narrowed into one single, trembling moment. Karen sat frozen, her breath shaky and uneven, her hands clasped together as if praying for a miracle she knew wasn't coming. The opposing party sat upright, bracing themselves. The gallery was silent, no whispers, no murmurs. Just the quiet anticipation of justice about to land. Judge Judy adjusted her glasses, not with impatience, but with the calm authority of someone who knew exactly what she was about to say, and knew it mattered. Miss Karen, she began, her voice steady, you forged a medical document. You attempted to deceive this court. You forced a licensed doctor to defend her integrity. You wasted the time and resources of every person involved in this case. Karen swallowed hard. But more than that, Judy continued, you tried to use mental health, something deeply personal and deeply painful for many people, as a shield for your own irresponsibility. Her tone sharpened, not louder, just clearer. That is unacceptable. Karen tried to speak, but Judy gently lifted a hand. No. You will listen. Karen closed her mouth. Judy leaned forward slightly, her expression soft but unwavering. I don't believe you are beyond repair. I don't believe you are evil. I believe you are someone who has gotten away with small lies for too long, until one day, the lie became too big to carry. Tears slipped down Karen's cheeks. This court, Judy said, is not here to ruin you. It is here to rebuild your understanding of truth. She tapped the forged note once, lightly. So here is my ruling. The gallery leaned in. First, Judy said, you will pay a fine for submitting fraudulent documentation to the court. Karen nodded weakly. Second, Judy continued, you will complete 80 hours of community service. Real service. Not a checkbox. Not an excuse. Something that reminds you what responsibility feels like. Karen wiped her tears. Third, Judy added, you are required to attend actual therapy sessions, not because you forged a note, but because you need to understand why you turned to deceit instead of honesty. A few people in the gallery nodded softly, the weight of the moment settling into them. And lastly, Judy said, tone softening again, you will issue a formal apology, in writing, to this court and to Dr. Franklin, acknowledging the seriousness of your actions. Karen sobbed, but for the first time, her tears weren't manipulative or performative. They were real. Yes, Your Honor, she whispered. I will. Judge Judy exhaled gently. Good. Then she did something no one expected. She leaned back, her voice quiet but warm, almost human in a way that reached even the coldest corners of the room. Miss Karen, Judy said, one mistake does not define your life. But refusing to learn from it would. Take this ruling not as punishment, but as permission to begin again the right way. The entire courtroom softened. Even the opposing party let out a long breath, their anger giving way to something closer to closure. Karen nodded, still crying. Thank you. Your Honor. Judy gave one final, gentle nod. Court is adjourned. The gavel didn't slam. It didn't need to. The moment itself was the gavel. Karen stood slowly, her body shaking, not from fear, but from release. From the understanding that truth, though painful, was lighter than the burden she'd been carrying. The gallery rose, some whispering their approval, others quietly inspired by what they heard. Judge Judy gathered her files, her calm presence still radiating strength, the underdog who had once again proven that quiet power is still power. And as the courtroom emptied, one message hung in the air like a final echo. Truth doesn't need to shout. It only needs to stand. If you want more stories where justice exposes the truth, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and comment "Justice wins" down below, so I know you made it to the end.